Hey everyone, and welcome to Comedians on Technology, People and Drugs. I'm your host, Sam Joseph, and today we're very lucky to have comedian Freddie Hill on the podcast. Hey Freddie, it's really great to have you with us. Thanks so much for sharing your time.
Hello. Yes. Thank you very much for having me.
Our pleasure, because you're a very funny person, and I think the audience is, of course, on the edge of their seats, wondering about your comedy origin story. Were you and three others sort of trapped in a spaceship in near Earth orbit and exposed to some sort of like moon gamma rays or something? How is it that it all kicked off?
How did you know? That's yeah. No, I mean that's it in a nutshell, really. I don't know. I mean, the thing with this is, I, I only started listening to this podcast very shortly before, so I don't really know how my answers are going to compare with other guests. Uh, because
No.
I um sorry just off micro should I don't know if I should explain for context off microphone the fact that I haven't prepared these questions in advance
Yeah,
basically.
well, and I think that's absolutely fine. And many people don't prepare the questions in advance. And like, I wouldn't say that anybody is sort of, at least I haven't encountered anybody who's sort of carefully going through the podcasts and comparing and contrasting exactly how people, describe them.
No.
But basically, I mean, the key thing for the first one is just, how did you get into what was that context in which you first got up on a stage and started telling jokes when that's something that most people are sort of absolutely terrified of?
Yes, no, sorry. I suppose what I was saying is that I don't know to what extent other people have given slightly sort of jokey or sarcastic. I will just tell you the story. I mean, my initial route into comedy wasn't through stand up.
Oh
It
yeah.
was it was at university through doing sketch comedy and improv.
Oh yeah.
And then right right towards the end of uni, I
Mm.
did my first few stand-up gigs
Hmm.
and then sort of maybe thought, oh no, this is what I should have been doing all along.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But then it was I wanted to continue doing comedy in some capacity, like after graduating, and
Mm.
stand-up's the easiest thing to do as well
Mm.
because well, it's just you, so you can just do
Right.
it on a lot more flexible.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, that was my way into performing comedy, but I guess I'd always, I'd always sort of consumed a lot of it, and was yeah, a big fan of stand up and just sitcoms and stuff growing up.
Oh, really? Yeah, no. So, and I guess, see, one of the things for me is when I never really considered, I mean, I was aware of stand-up, but didn't really understand how it could be done, or didn't believe it was something that I could possibly do. Or when I then tried it, like for the very first time, was like, oh no, this is completely impossible. I can't possibly. But I'm interested in like, so what the particular things that you were watching when you were growing up and how that influenced you and your sort of awareness about what stand-up comedy was, but then I'm also very interested, yeah, in like the early sketch comedy and improv and that first gig to tell us everything.
Oh yeah, well, so I mean, I suppose yeah, I suppose I was watching comedy a long time before it really would have occurred to me to actually have a go at doing it
Right, right.
myself. Um, yeah, so I mean, I think probably the first co I think I remember watching quite a lot of stuff when I was very young, but probably at a point at which like I just can't have sort of understood all of it. Like so,
Sure.
I guess a classic example was The Simpsons, but it's like
Mm.
I mean maybe that kind of speaks to the um appeal of something like that because there's so many jokes and stuff in that
Right, so
that
many layers. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So even if a lot of it was going over my head, that there's maybe kind of enough that I was able to sort of latch onto or kind of understand. But then I think also, uh, yeah, I remember seeing like black books when I was quite young. And,
Mm.
um,
To the Moran, yeah.
yeah, I mean, all those, uh, yeah, like well, a few of those kind of Graham Linehan ones, like the
Uh,
IT.
icy crowd. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, um, and yeah, I think also yeah, the Mighty Boosh I remember
Right.
watching, like, yeah, which was kind of I guess because that's quite sort of off the wall and surreal and stuff. So
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um, but then uh, I yeah, I suppose then getting a getting a bit older. I mean, I suppose not just comedy, but I was just consuming lots of stuff. So
Hmm.
I was always kind of I I've always been a big sort of music fan,
Oh yeah.
quite sort of nerdy on that front.
Hmm.
But then I think I didn't really. I feel like I didn't really do much creative stuff for like basically my entire adolescence. Basically,
Really.
I don't really know. Just sort of presumably just because I was just busy with stuff, but also probably a degree of self-consciousness and things.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then it was only yeah, it was only really at university where it kind of like occurred to me to
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, maybe have a go at starting to do things.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Uh,
And I assume that, I mean, that was sort of, well, I don't know, was it, because some people, might do creative writing or a drama degree, or maybe you were doing some other degree and then you were doing it as a sort of like, as a part of a club in the university. What would it look like?
yeah, so I went to Bristol
Mm,
and
mm.
I guess well I guess quite a few different universities they have their own sort of sketch comedy society. I mean, the
Right.
most famous one being Footlights, the
Cambridge,
Cambridge
obviously.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, kind of quite a few have kind of equivalent sort of inferior versions. So I was part of the Bristol Reunions,
Ah,
which was yeah, really yeah, good fun. And I'm still in touch with all the people I
great.
was uh to today, yeah, and kind of towards like in my at the end of my final year, we all went to the Edinburgh Fringe and like performed,
Brilliant.
yeah, like and then at the same time there was also a separate improv society, but kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
probably sort of understandable. There was quite a lot of crossover between the two.
Mm, mm, mm.
Like a lot of they were kind of nominally separate societies, but a lot of the same people seemed to be involved in both.
Right, right.
And I think that was a massive. I think I feel. I mean, I'm speaking like in relative terms here, but I think that
Yeah.
gave me a massive amount of confidence it's because improv by its very nature involves being out of your depth and you just have to be on stage and
Right.
just come up with something on the spot.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's the feeling of not having like you can't overthink things by definition because you need to sort of fill the silence with
Right.
something or other.
Mm, mm, mm.
And I think possibly if I hadn't done improv, I wouldn't have dared to do stand up in the first place.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not to say that my first stand up gig wasn't terrifying.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was substantially less terrifying than
Right.
I think it kind of
It could
would
have
have.
been.
Yeah, and I think also in a way, I mean, my first gig, I didn't have anything prepared
Oh, really?
because yeah, well, so it was well a bunch of friends through kind of comedy societies were like putting on a stand-up show, but then a bunch
Ah,
of people dropped out uh fairly last minute.
right.
So someone just asked me, "Oh, do you want to go up and do anything?" And well, I said, "Well, I don't really have any material."
Uh-huh.
And then I think I had about an hour before the show to sort of
Right. Right.
get something together. But I
Sure.
think in a weird way, like I think that again, I think that really took the pressure off in a way because I think
Sure.
if I had a lot more time to
Mm,
get through, uh, then I think I could have really built it up in my mind as like something to be
yeah,
really afraid of. But
sure.
whereas with that, I kind of thought, oh well, this will obviously go so disastrously, almost to the point that it. I kind of thought it was quite funny that I didn't have any material in the
Right.
first place, and
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of inevitably, like I mean, I don't. It was all a bit of a blur, but I think all of the jokes that I made were kind of based around the fact that I didn't really have anything,
Sure.
uh,
Sure.
and the absurdity of that situation. But then it kind of, uh, yeah, it's that thing of like, well, once you've done that, it's just like, oh yeah, this is doable. I'm not
Right.
dead. And yeah,
Yes, yes. You kind of, I don't know, well, that makes a lot of sense. I think certain for some people, it's when it's further in the future and you're thinking, oh, what somebody wants me to do this thing in this month and I have to prepare for it, and then that's kind of like, and hence the last minute dropouts that you talk about the other people who are preparing more. And yeah, no, I mean that all makes sense. And I guess the sort of I guess in the context of the university, the sketch society, the improv thing, when you were rehearsing a sketch and then performing that in front of an audience or getting up as part of an improv show, it didn't feel like such an insurmountable barrier at each of those stages, right? It kind of didn't
yeah,
seem like such a
exactly.
big deal because there was a framework supporting you doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I guess yeah, I had some sort of precedent for what I was doing. Yeah, I found a way to kind of ease myself in, I guess, rather than just going straight in at the deep end, which I'd say, yeah, I'd say stand up is probably the most. I mean, to start doing is probably the most nerve-wracking of those things, I think.
Yeah, I think you're the most exposed in that context. I mean, it's yeah, there's a slight paradox. I mean, I always enjoyed being performing in plays in school, and then I did like amateur dramatics at university, and then discovered improv, and then was like kicking myself like, oh wow, I could have avoided all this rehearsing, and I could have just been doing the improv. That would have been much like like lower effort. I mean, not that improv doesn't require, I mean, I think improv is great, it requires great skill and, with great practice becomes great improv, but you're not kind of for, it's there's this sort of memorization of lines and like where to stand and all of this sort of stuff that goes hand in hand with being in a sort of like a directed show. Yeah, I wish I'd discovered improv earlier. Although now I'm like my inclination to do improv is pretty much zero, at least to do it as part of a group because I want it to be all about me. I want to be the one person on the stage, and as you say, it's then longer term. It's easier. Like people might be like when you were mentioning before that stand-up comedy is easier. That you explained, but just to reiterate that point, which I think is a great point that you made, which is yeah, you don't need the whole improv team. You don't need like the six people to all come together to rehearse, or to put the sketch on for stand up. It's just you and just your thoughts, and so it's kind of like your ticket to ride. I don't know if that even makes sense, but it's easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also, yeah, I, I imagine you're relating it this, but there's also the sense that kind of because it's just you,
Mm,
yeah, it really gives you a freedom to try things out. Whereas I suppose, while in lots of ways it's quite fun to work collaboratively with other people, and
mm,
it has
mm.
the kind of social element. I suppose there's the idea of like, well, if you say suggest a certain idea or whatever, you kind of you worry like, oh well, if this doesn't work, I feel slightly bad about having sort of convinced other people to come along with me.
Right.
Where like it's kind of with stand up, yeah, it's very much kind of all your successes and failures are your own.
Right.
Uh, so I think in a way, it's like I felt more free to take risks with stand up a bit in a way because it's just me. So it's like if this doesn't work, that this is exclusive,
Okay.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're saying in the context of the improv, like if you or a sketch, if you're coming up with a thing and you're sort of like putting this on, hey team, let's go in this direction,
Yeah,
and then you're kind of like, if it then that doesn't work out, you're kind of like, it's not just on you. It's sort of like, oh, I've let these other people down. Why did? Oh no, I've convinced them, and actually they think I'm an idiot because, which is interesting because there's another. I completely agree. I'm not disagreeing
yeah,
at all. As I think what's really interesting is how stand up is kind of like improv, but with the audience. It's basically like you've got an improv team, which is effectively everybody else in the room, but you have, through social convention, restricted them to not to only be able to participate in a certain way, and it's just kind of it's just strange in my mind, like when I think about the way we set up open mics or gigs or we do sketch comedy, the kind of like expectations that we try and impose on people, and then sometimes they break it, right? The hecklers want to get involved or whatever it
yeah.
happens to be. It's just I don't know, all these forms I think are really really interesting.
But yeah, I think that can actually be a really exciting thing. I think. I mean, maybe again, well, possibly because we both got a sort of improv background as well, where it's that. I mean, it's that thing where uh, I guess a bit like when you said that it's kind of it's stand up. It's largely it's a monologue that you've kind
Right,
of devised as a dialogue.
right, right.
I that's not my original idea. Someone
No, no,
else
no. Yeah, yeah.
said that specific, but I can't remember who.
No.
Uh, so I may as well claim credit for it. But kind of, but it I think it can be quite funny. Yeah, when you've sort of deliberately sort of orchestrated something. So well, say you've set up a bit of crowd work or something
Right,
and
right,
you're anticipating it going in a particular direction, but
right.
then it just gives it just a completely bizarre off the wall answer.
Mm, mm.
And it's I I really enjoy that feeling of like, well, kind of what now and like how
Right.
you and I think that's firstly like a funny thing to kind of play off because
Mm.
then you get a bit kind of
Yeah.
almost like meta with it, saying like, no, I'd anticipated you
Right,
giving
right.
this, now you've ruined everything.
Yes,
But
yes.
I'm also kind of yeah, like well, I guess yeah, I quite enjoy sometimes yeah having things like heckles or just something slightly weird and unexpected coming up and having to navigate that, I think.
Yeah, I think, and what's ironic, maybe particularly at our level, is that sometimes those things that don't go that go strange are actually the funniest thing on the evening.
Exactly. Yeah. It's I mean that there's I guess the classic thing where it's like I mean especially when you see like really new people where it's like, well, none of their pre-prepared stuff is really working.
Yeah,
Then they'll make some self-deprecating joke about
how it's
that,
not working.
but because that's off the cuff and stuff,
Yes.
then that suddenly gets a big laugh.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like, oh well, and because I suppose with that is yeah, it suddenly just feels more sort of authentic and real and
yeah.
in as opposed to
No, absolutely, absolutely. And there's something about realness and authenticity and so on that unlocks laughter. And I think, the kind of like the great comedians are able to sort of inject that sense of authenticity and realness into something that they've said hundreds and hundreds of times, is part of the skill that they've developed. Yeah, it's a strange thing.
yeah, I think it's like I think it's like a Dolly Parton quote or something, which she said like, "Oh, um, like it costs a lot of money to look this cheap," and I
Mm,
think with sometimes with really good stand-ups and stuff, it's like, oh, it takes a lot of effort to make it look this natural. I think
right,
that
right.
kind of that that it's kind of it's because of the just gigging they've done that they're just so kind of
Yeah, that
just themselves on stage like that's something which kind of perversely yeah requires a lot of effort to get to that point, I think,
Yeah,
or
it's
just
it's
a
it's
lot
it's
of
very
time.
strange. Yeah, I keep on trying to find some shortcut that just allow that's like it seems like of the many ways that you can do it. Two that springs to mind are one, like as I say, having gigged intensely and done the same material over and over so many times that you're now completely relaxed about it. It's so there's no, and so as you know, you're kind of like just basically your personality just shining through. Or if you just really didn't give a fuck and you just got up there and that's sort of I'm kind of lent that way because I kind of end up getting really sick of saying the same thing over and over again. Like I just want to be talking about new stuff almost every time I get up on stage. Yeah, it's oh, there was me trying to turn off all the beeps, and we've got this is a special. I've got a beep. It comes on every day at 6 that says "Love everybody and tell the truth," which is like fuck that. Okay, but yeah, going back to that, yeah, it's but so I'm fascinated. Like going forward, then you had this as you were sort of saying, you had this one, only 1 hour to prepare stand-up show where you were in the moment doing the thing, da, da, da. And then it was like having done one, it's like, oh, well, why don't I do some more? But what did that look like? How did you then decide to carry on doing more and more?
So my first five, I think, gigs were all in Bristol, where
Right.
yeah, so it was right,
Hmm. Hmm.
right at the end. But then there were there well, I suppose, but because I'd sort of come through this society,
Mm.
were like a few people, who had graduated, but were still living in the city,
Mm. Mm.
who were sort of doing stand up and stuff, so that there were people I could talk to. And then yeah, like a couple of them were like running a night, so I was able to get a spot through there. And
Cool.
yeah,
And this was outside. This was like actually just in a pub with that random people could turn up to. So different from the university, like theatre or whatever.
yes, but I guess the two things were a bit blurred together. 'Cause, like, while it's not, well, I don't think you wouldn't really call it a university town because it's bigger than that.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I suppose it was in a kind of quite studenty part of the city.
Mm.
It
Mm.
was a thing of like you sort of anyone could turn up, but you would get quite a few students there as well, just because.
Yeah. Oh, and it was a pub that students regularly and you'd been to drinking otherwise, and so now it's like, oh,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah,
yeah. So it doesn't feel like I'm stepping out onto the stage at the Apollo or anything there.
yeah, exactly. Well, it probably did feel like that, but it very much wasn't like that.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, kind of. But in I guess like your first few gigs, yeah,
Yeah.
I think everything is so elevated, like,
Yeah.
and I think yeah, those first few gigs went pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, again, these are all relative to, but like I had nice crowds in and things
Yeah,
like
and you
that.
you felt good about them. This is the key thing, independently of any objective measure of what's
Yeah,
going on.
exactly. Yeah.
And
But yeah,
and
it's quite funny just thinking back on all of these things because it's like, well, no, I've seen people starting out. I know it can't have been that, but like, yeah, again, because I think when you start out, you're quite nervous and stuff,
yeah.
and then uh,
Was those for those first few after that first one? Did you continue doing that? Well, I'm just going to spend an hour in advance, or did you start preparing more for
oh
those
yeah,
early
no,
gigs?
no, I started preparing more for them and stuff as well. So, but yeah, I think with one, but then I think. Yeah, I think I'd really thought like, well, with the first one, I thought, well, that went a lot better than I thought it would, given that I have nothing. So I may as well sort of see what I could do if I do
Mm,
start preparing.
mm,
Yeah, and then so doing the sort of standard thing of like you record yourself, you see what works, what doesn't, and then you
right.
just kind of say the things which work again, and then sort of
Mm, mm, mm.
slowly start sort of cobbling a five together, I think. But I think the strange thing starting out is possibly because I liked it, lots of different types of comedy.
Mm,
It's like, well, like, and I guess because I'd done sketch stuff and improv and stuff, like I didn't have a very clear picture in my mind of what sort of a stand-up I wanted to be.
mm,
Um, and I don't really know if that's normal or not, but like I
mm,
don't know if people go in with a kind of like they're looking to a specific comedian and they kind of almost base their
mm, mm.
like delivery
Sure.
or persona or like slightly
I
off.
think certainly unconsciously, some people will do that to differing degrees. Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and I think sort of relatively early towards that, I think I had some quite good jokes and stuff, but it was just a complete sort of just bizarre sort of patchwork of just
right.
sort of different, like, so I had kind of one-liners, but then also kind of
Stories.
prop gags and
Oh,
things like
okay. Yeah, right.
that. Very kind of weird and
Yeah.
but uh but then kind of I think yeah, as it goes on, you slowly sort of start to get more of an idea of what your like voice or whatever is, and
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I'm not meaning to disagree. I'm just so confused about my own journey that you know,
yeah,
you may well be right. I have no idea. The
it,
Go on.
it is weird as well. I think yeah, with stand-up as well because it's like because so much of the process it happens like when you're on stage.
Mm,
Uh, but like while I mean there are lots of books. I mean, I guess notably that Adam Bloom one about
yes.
kind of sort of attempting to sort of describe the kind of theory of
Yeah,
behind
mechanics.
and stuff. But yeah,
Mm.
it's really not something you can kind of do in a vacuum and just like perfect before taking it out to the world. So it is just this weird kind of like evolutionary iterative process where you just learn a bit from each gig hopefully and then kind of over time on average
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's yeah, so many different things. I mean, I guess what's I mean, I think interesting about it is that people doing it then repeat doing it, and it's not necessarily obvious why one keeps coming back to it. I mean, you and I are both serial repeaters of these things, and I mean, as you were doing those were those first five then in relatively quick succession, or were there like a big gap between each one, or what was motivating you to do more at that time?
yeah, I mean, I think, um, well, I think, as I said, it was like right towards the end of university, and
Yeah.
and I think it's sort of having done. I think when I did stand up, I kind of thought, well, having done sort of other forms of comedy and stuff,
Hmm. Hmm.
I think finally coming to stand up,
Hmm.
kind of thinking like, oh no, no, this is the best. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then I think I maybe had a bit of a feeling of like, oh, well, I need to like make up for lost time and start booking myself in for stuff. But
Yeah.
then even that, I mean, I think I at the time it felt like it was kind of in relatively quick succession, but it was probably five over about 3 weeks or something, which
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
compared to what like lots of people we know do now. I mean, there's people we both know who are gigging every night or
Yes,
whatever.
and even
But
multiple times every night, and some of them, yeah, it's
yeah,
yeah,
so,
it does.
yeah,
There does seem to be. I mean, like interesting. I'll try to put back to what you were saying there, which was you were saying like you'd done a variety of things, and then you found this thing, and it was like there was something coming from it that you were like, okay, this is like higher grade than what I'd been smoking
yeah.
previously, and I want more of this. And I think, yeah, when I think back to like doing and I started booking in, for me, I mean, it was like, right, I got to do two, I got to try, I mean, fitting in with family and work, whatever, getting two or three a week for a long period. But I felt like really compelled to do it. And even when gigs would go, sometimes they go well, sometimes they go badly, be a mix or what have you. But I don't know that I really understand why I want to do it so much. It's just that I have that feeling that I do. I don't know about for you. Is it clear in your mind what it is you enjoy about it?
It's really not at all, no.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, I suppose it's almost it's not necessarily always enjoyable. I mean, the overall process of doing it is enjoyable, and
Bigger
I feel
picture.
like I get a
Yeah.
lot out of it. But it's not like it's not as if every moment is enjoyable or whatever. But I think it's but I think maybe that is the same. I think one of the things that I kind of like about the stand up is that it's not one thing. So
Right.
I think maybe I wouldn't enjoy it as much if I could pinpoint exactly what it is I like so much about it. Because I guess it's like it's maybe part of what I like about it is just the sort of showing off that there's just a kind of ego driven thing. But then it's
I
also
certainly love that myself. Yeah, sorry, do go on.
but then I also guess it's very sociable. I think there's a real kind of like
Hmm.
community
Yeah.
stuff uh based around stand up. I guess there's something really nice about just having the freedom. Like you can just say whatever you like on stage. That you have
Yes.
that there's few things in life which kind of where you have that kind of just
No,
complete.
absolutely, and I think I mean, I was coming off the back of my mind is that so some countries there are many more restrictions. I mean, we're lucky both in the country that we live in that the secret police aren't coming and monitoring. Well, at least I hope they're not monitoring what we're saying at the gigs. And yeah, there is something about that freedom, and that's partly why for me I love talking about stuff that's just happened rather than stuff that I've been polishing for years and years, because there's that freedom of like, oh, this happened today. I'm going to talk about it now, and that there's something about that that I really like. But
Is it? Yeah, it's like well, the dust hasn't settled on this. Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah, and this is I've got feelings, that there's feelings and emotions about this today, and I want to express those through the medium of the stand-up. But then so you did that little cluster of gigs at Bristol, and then you moved back to London, and you got straight into the London open mic
yeah,
scene.
yeah, more or less, yeah, kind of, yeah, immediately. So then, yeah, I think the first one I did in London was Comedy Virgins at the Cav, and
Right,
then
right.
yeah, and then I think just it, it's one of those you just start talking to people and then you learn about a lot, sort of various Facebook groups and
Yeah, yeah.
kind of ways of booking gigs and you just start doing it and just yeah
Yeah,
sort
and
of
then it went on from there. I mean, and now, like I guess it doesn't have to be blah 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 every element, but so I guess a flavor is you're now gigging, kind of regularly. I mean, I can't remember when you first came to Sunset Comedy. In my mind, I was like you came across as quite some of the material was quite dark the first time, but then when you were most recently with your the Willy Wonka material, which I absolutely loved, and I was just like, this is it's like the yeah, bro, really, really loved that material and the attitude and the personality all sort of came together there. And but how is that journey from like the first five in Bristol to where you are now? Are you feeling good about it? Where is it up to? Is it going in a particular direction?
uh yeah, or at least it sort of felt it it has. I mean, slightly annoyingly at the moment I've been just my kind of my work schedule is quite sort of erratic and sometimes like in the evenings and
Right,
stuff.
sure.
So I can't gig as much as I'd like to.
Mm.
So I'm currently, I've been trying to apply for jobs and stuff so as to try and so make it all work
Yeah,
to kind of
you actually
fit
actively
around.
looking for a job that would have different hours that would give you more flexibility for the stand up. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I think because I went up to Edinburgh like this August
Yes.
and because I mean not for the whole month but for a
Yeah.
couple of weeks but like in that concentrated period of time I was doing a split bill show
Mm.
with a friend but then also on top of that doing just as many spots as I could around the
Sure.
place
Yeah.
and it really kind of coming off the back of that, it's I really felt like I developed in a short space of time then.
Mm. Mm.
But then you kind of but that's because for that period of time you were in this kind of bubble where you can just think about comedy 24/7.
Right.
Whereas then sort of coming back and you're having to sort of juggle other responsibilities and
Sure.
stuff. I suppose with that, it's like I felt like I had like a very tempting sort of glimpse as to like, oh well,
This is what it could be like.
happen. Yeah, if I was gigging a lot, and so. at the moment, I suppose where I'm at is trying to find a way of
Yeah,
constructing my life so I can do that.
absolutely. Which is, I think, for many of us, yeah. Like I think for whatever reason we've become addicted to this particular art form. If we're posh, and yeah, there's just, isn't it? It's like trying to fit it in with your life and work and other things, such that it's. I mean, yeah, it would just. It's a funny one because you sort of feel a bit like perhaps with musicians, I don't know if this is true, but like if they can just get the time alone with their instruments, they can maybe keep.
Yeah.
Whereas it sort of feels. I mean, clearly the live performance of music is very important as well, but it sort of feels like you can't really be assessing your progress unless you're in front of an audience. And getting in front of an audience like it often feels to me in London. There's more people who want to be on stage than actually want to be in an audience.
That is true, yeah, which is the kind of yeah bizarre. I mean, hence you have like bringing gigs and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's yeah, yeah. We have to sort of manufacture an audience in order to practice our thing. Yeah, I suppose yeah that is the yeah. I'm quite envious of yeah, I guess it's like people doing other art forms, stuff like yeah, musicians and painters and stuff. I suppose there's the thing with that sort of thing, yeah, but because say being a musician, like live performance is part of it,
Mm,
but the live performance wouldn't necessarily be sort of vastly different from like what you're doing in private, in
mm,
the sense that sort of um if you practice playing a song a lot or whatever that and learn to do that really well, then that's something that you can just basically recreate in front of an audience.
mm.
And music is something, yeah, I guess, which is like it it would be a perfectly kind of normal thing for someone to say play their guitar in their room for their own entertainment.
Yeah,
And uh whereas it would feel really weird, I think, just telling like one-liners or t telling jokes just to an empty room. Yeah,
yeah.
that is the marker of insanity, I think.
Well,
But
I was doing that every night for about 18 months until I
oh,
discovered.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd say every night. I mean, every night that I didn't have a gig, basically, I would have the microphone stand and the microphone set up to record, and I would basically free talk. With so sometimes it would be my set that I was watching, or other time I was just like trying new material night in my bedroom, no, no, or my living room, doing it. And the sofa sometimes really responded well, but more so than the audience in the real gigs. But what I discovered now is with virtual reality, I do that, and when I don't, I mean, I have these virtual reality gigs, so I slap on a virtual reality headset, and instead of just talking to my sofa, I'm now talking to people from all over the world in different combinations in
Oh, yeah,
VR.
that's really yeah, that's really cool.
It's well, and it removes, at least on those nights, I don't have to travel. But that leads us nicely into our second question, which is about how technology is affecting your life and comedy. There's all sorts of technology going on, these days, AI, VR, all this. We're up the wazoo with technology. Is it? I mean, you had mentioned already recording your gigs and like listening back to them and trying to find the bits that worked and the bits that didn't. Do you see technology? I mean, and I'll just also mention, by technology, it doesn't have to be the latest AI. It could just be, pen and paper is a kind of technology, and it's sort of like a thinly veiled facade over me being really interested in your comedy process and how you come up with how you manage life, how you manage your comedy. Yeah, is there much technology involved? Are you stone tablet guy? What's the?
Well, I mean, I suppose uh I I was actually just listening to your episode with Ollie,
Oh yeah.
and he was just talking about well, I mean, for one thing, just the admin side of comedy, which I mean is
Mm,
obviously one of the less exciting parts, but just
yes.
I mean that takes place like completely over the internet and like largely through social media,
Yeah,
through
yeah, yeah.
messaging pages, filling out Google forms and
Mm,
stuff. So
mm, mm, mm.
I suppose that's a sort of obvious place off the top of my head where there's a kind of an intersection between the two. I suppose also in terms of uh trying to promote yourself as a comedian. I think
Right.
increasingly people are posting clips of themselves online, and which is
Yeah.
something I think uh I I'm not especially dynamic about doing, but I've
Mm.
sort of had a few of those things. It's quite an interesting thing, that one, I think, because I
Mm.
feel often people who I think are like are really like, funny comedians and stuff. I sometimes see people. It feels like they're sort of posting too much content to the extent that like I think some of it just feels like maybe not that well thought through or whatever. But I do
That
kind
could
of
certainly
wonder.
describe me. Yeah. Yeah. It's a.
But I mean I don't really know, because I don't know if there's an extent to which there's a kind of like maybe that's quite a sort of effective strategy for sort of gaming the algorithm or something, like if you kind of sort of fire enough stuff out into the kind of ether, there's like you just a statistically higher chance that
You
you
find
know
the people who actually like it, maybe. I don't
yeah,
know.
exactly. So you kind of wind up on someone's sort of timeline or news feed or whatever.
Yeah, it's a weird one. And I was having a conversation with Vinny at your gig on Thursday, and he we were sort of talking about um, like social media stuff and getting stuff on social media. And he was mentioning, I think, Reese Kidd, who I think started at a similar time as us,
Yeah.
and but is apparently doing very well. And Vinny was saying that, like, oh, what is it? Yeah, that he was like doing stuff on YouTube clips that was sort of like related to his material, and it kind of like it just sort of like struck a chord, and like I don't know if it's how many followers he's now got, but Vinny was saying along the lines of like 100,000 followers on Instagram, that's a career, that is. And there's definitely this sense. I mean, like there is in Japan, over the last 18 months, one guy there, BJ Fox, who's very talented in both English and Japanese comedy. He wasn't really interested in doing that social media stuff, but one of the Japanese guys who was working at the Tokyo Comedy Bar started putting his stuff onto TikTok and Instagram and so on, and like now he's touring, and every weekend he's touring a different city in Japan. So it's kind of like there definitely seems to be this potential elevator that maybe sidesteps some of the gatekeepers who would have previously, taken that.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly how to. I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm sort of going through my back catalog and cutting up things and putting them up. I mean, yeah, it's difficult to. Should you be very, very carefully selecting only the bits with the biggest laughs and the best angles and this, that, and the other, or yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, I'm not particularly. Yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly kind of averse to using social media about it, but I think possibly, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's like I don't really know how much kind of quality control to sort of exert over
No, no,
what I'm
absolutely.
doing. It feels a bit bad to just put something out there for the sake of putting it out there. But then also at the same time, maybe that is kind of maybe that's a more kind of appropriate kind of like almost like workman-like approach to doing it, rather than just being
Yeah,
like only.
it's difficult to know. I mean, the way I'm sort of approaching the moment is that partly because I mean, what I tend to be doing each evening is like I've got. I mean, I've written this app that basic to do the what is it called, you put the words on captioning, right? And but it uses like an AI to caption the things, but it's not perfect, and it needs a certain amount of editing. So I'm kind of going through a previous thing, and I've got these captions, and I'm sort of editing, and I what I find is I'm a bit like it's a bit like I don't know, for some people who get stuck playing Candy Crush or Tetris or what have you, like getting the captions to match what I say. There's something like intensely like I almost can't stop myself from editing the captions for it. And I'm basically going through and having got a chunk like of a minute or 30 seconds or 90 seconds that's now got the captions correct, I feel like I've done this work. I've done this work to get the captions right, and now I want to deliver something. And the way
Yeah, no.
somehow in my mind, TikTok is
Yeah.
kind of like a dumping ground. Or maybe I shouldn't think of it like that, but basically, so I kind of tend to put everything on TikTok, and then the things on TikTok that get above a certain number of likes, I'll then put those on Instagram that I see as a kind of like, like slightly higher profile thing. And I guess if anything does really well on Instagram, maybe I'll put it on YouTube. But that sort of hierarchy of the different, like sort of value of the, so I don't like is in my mind, and perhaps nobody else's. I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that at all, but I really love that. I mean, I think in terms of the kind of hierarchy thing, I mean, I definitely, I think I have, I think I sort of have that as a hierarchy, as a sort of consumer of this thing.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
I mean, like, as in, I think kind of, I think I'm basically quite addicted to Instagram at this point in time.
really.
Like, I feel like that ship has sort of sailed, and
Mm.
I'll put clips on TikTok, but I'm also sort of a bit, I'm I think I'm quite afraid of TikTok basically because I think I've got too like I think of it as that have you seen like in Aliens face
A
hugging.
face hugger, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like on TikTok I'll just sort of fire stuff out, but then kind of close the app instantly because I just think like, oh well, if I
Well,
spend
no,
too
that's exactly. I mean, I have deleted TikTok from
much
my
time on
phone because I just can't. It's just such a time sink, and basically I worked out that I can submit the videos on TikTok on my browser on my laptop, and so I kind of very carefully. I mean, and actually, yeah, I find that I begrudge the time that like sort of endless scrolling in these things sucks up. And so I mean I feel kind of bad like that it's a bit like there's this incredibly toxic, dangerous thing into which I'm firing my material in the idea that I can get that sort of beamed into other people's brains, but I'm actually not willing to sort of participate in that whatever brain like mixing that's happening with these apps.
Yeah, yeah, it feels really kind of I know exactly like it yeah, there's something which feels kind of sort of hypocritical about it in a way, like being like, oh well, hopefully I can like attract a following of people who are addicted to this thing that I don't want to, yeah, kind
Right,
of put,
that I wouldn't want to
yeah,
become addicted to. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
oh gosh, what kind of strange world in which we live.
yeah. Very, yeah, very kind of um well, it's the world we live in, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah, and then to take it towards the development of your material, and are you finding like I guess so many people like you have your phone and whenever you have a comedy thought you write the note down in the phone and then occasionally you make time to sort of review them and sort of think about saying them on stage, or how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I do. I think, yeah, and I think it's also, I think I find like a lot of the time it's that I'll have a funny thought, but then I feel like it will take me like quite a bit of time to kind of sort of whittle that down into the exact kind of wording of it. I think that
Yeah.
I think that sort of a lot of I guess just so much about comedy feels about rhythm or whatever, and
Mm,
that that I think this was something that I that re that sort of really surprised me going into comedy. I think
mm,
which is kind of odd because it's like, well, I told jokes and stuff with my friends and stuff before,
mm, mm,
but I think I kind of assumed it would be more about coming up with funny ideas,
mm.
uh, as opposed to so much of it. It feels about not just the delivery, but just the exact way that you kind of express the ideas themselves.
Mm, hmm.
Um, kind of that certain ways of wording things will kind of detonate a laugh and then
Yeah, yeah.
just kind of fall a bit flat. And it's like you're saying effectively the same thing, but it's just for whatever reason, if I use this choice of word, it's funny. And when it,
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, and so do you find yourself like yeah, you're over time you're getting things into a state, and there is that particular word ordering that's important, and then you sort of stick you kind of stick to it. I mean, I guess you're not kind of memorizing it like a script so much, but you're still trying to get the words in a certain order. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's the sort of I mean, I think eventually, I mean, yeah, it's never been like a script in the sense that I've never really written out a
Mm,
set.
mm,
It kind of I know that some people do that. They write like
mm,
every word,
mm,
and
mm.
I don't really get how I think if I tried to write it out, it would be in almost sort of too. I think it would read almost like an academic essay or something. It would be in too kind of
Uh-huh.
formal a register if I tried to write it down. Like it
Right,
has
right.
to be something that kind of sounds like me. But I
Mm,
suppose because I'm recording each set and I'm kind of listening back to that and trying to
yeah.
think like what might sound slightly better, and I'm just kind of turning over phrases and stuff in my
Mm,
head,
mm, mm,
trying to um yeah, like just find better ways of expressing things and also kind of finding better ways to kind of link ideas up and
sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of
Yeah,
make it so.
it's weird. Like I find myself conflicted about like the word ordering. Like it definitely feels like, something that gets a big laugh in one room, that if I've then it doesn't get necessarily such a big laugh in another room. And then like I guess, and this is part of the exciting puzzle, is it down to the word order, or was it down to the extent to which that material resonated with these folks as opposed to those folks? And was it that actually just all of these rooms were completely full of comedians and not actually real people? And it just there's this kind of weird. I find myself confused about what actually needs to be tweaked, and am I hamstringing myself by not repeating the same material over and over and over again? Because then I don't get to actually recognize the pattern about. Yeah, I'm very confused. Is all I say.
Yeah, well, it is very confusing. I imagine we all are, or if anyone doesn't think they're very confused, that person's probably a bit terrifying. But
Yeah, or
I
you mentioned, of course, the book by Adam Bloom, which is, which is a remarkable book, and he's got lots of amazing ideas in there, which I haven't really applied. There's kind of a bit of me, like, because I come from a sort of academic technology background where it's very this, and part of the reason I'm doing comedy is for the looseness and the artsy, what have you, and the kind of like, so I feel I'm not so like, in some ways I want there to be a simple answer about how to do it well and get laughs every time. At the same time, yeah, I'm not sure that I like the idea of a particular frame. But sorry, yeah, what's your thoughts on the matter?
oh yeah, well that's quite an it. Like I do think yeah it. I mean I sometimes think well sorry it's difficult to know where to start. I'm having various thoughts branching off in different
Sure.
directions. I think um with the Adam Bloom thing, I think sometimes I don't know if it's made me a better comedian. I think
Hmm.
it's made me. I think I feel I can more accurately describe what I'm doing wrong.
Hmm.
Basically, there. I could kind of I feel like I could kind of articulate flaws with things I've written more clearly, but
Hmm.
it doesn't necessarily it hasn't necessarily helped with the sort of generation of ideas.
Hmm.
I found it really interesting to read, but I think also some of these things when you're talking about the kind of looseness and stuff, I feel like one of the ways it's quite interesting is that
Hmm.
he does sort of it he I think lots of things that I think lots of comedians do instinctively,
Hmm.
he's that kind of distilling
Hmm.
that
Sure.
through a formula.
Hmm.
Whereas with some of those things that I kind of think you don't necessarily need to learn that because you can just sort of learn that subconsciously, I think, from listening to comedy. I think say with some of the stuff I was saying about rhythm and stuff like that, like he has all these terms like kind of seesaws and
Hmm.
like balls and
Yeah,
cubes
the
and
cubes and things. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, which yeah, I found really interesting, but I think there it feels a bit. I think it's quite strange to imagine someone sort of learning to do comedy that way
Right.
because all of these things should feel a bit sort of almost instinctive. I guess to use an analogy,
Yeah.
say with music or whatever, like I mean, I suppose people have formal training in music, but it's like if you might not know the term, oh well, you might not know terms like major or minor or whatever,
Sure, sure.
but you can kind of see like, oh well, that's a C major chord, and that sounds.
Right.
You can say, well, that chord sounds nice, and uh, that's just someone's just slammed their
Right.
hands on the piano, and that sounds completely sort of dissonant
Yes,
and
yes.
like I think sort of you don't need to have a kind of I'm not sure that how helpful it is him distilling it down to formulas, but I think it in terms of like I don't know if to what extent reading that book would actually make one any funnier than say just a person who just like watched a lot of funny stuff and was just telling jokes a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting what you're saying there. Like, I think for, experienced comedians, they have through whatever mechanism, like, got these instincts that allow them to be more reliably funny than not. And Adam Bloom may well have, sort of it is have distilled, as you say, like aspects of that. It was maybe a bit like riding a bicycle, in that you could read a lot of books about the theory of riding a bicycle. That wouldn't that and that might be interesting and true. And if you're an experienced bicycle rider, that may also open up interesting ideas and so on. But it's not necessarily the thing that allows the person who can't yet ride a bicycle to be able to suddenly ride a bicycle with great skill. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting stuff. I mean, we could carry on talking about that, and perhaps we will at some point. I'm tempted to drag us through further questions. The podcast is called Comedians on Technology, People and Drugs, and the people thing actually was always supposed to be about relationships. I mean, I'm not very good at talking about relationships, as in like sort of like loving relationships, but it's ended up being this question's evolved into like we ask which people have had the biggest impact on your life and comedy, and it's funny because I think when I was thinking about it originally, it was like technology, yeah, and like people and their love lives and then drugs. But then it says like sex and drugs and rock and roll, or sex and drugs and technology. But I'm just sort of lamenting how I don't really have the what's the word skill or there's almost like an embarrassment level there. But yeah, I kind of feel like we talk about technology, we talk about drugs. Um, the well, I'm interested in the people, not necessarily your sexual partners, but this is the question we ask: is which people have had the biggest impact on your life and comedy? And often that's it comes up during the comedy origin story, but it's like a opportunity here to shout out those people. And they don't have to be people It could be influencers. You already talked about a few, but yeah, who do you see as the people having the biggest influence on you?
Um, well, I mean, well, the boring answer is probably my parents,
Sure.
uh, but yeah, and my older brother, I suppose. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I suppose in terms of well, getting a lot of so I'm a younger sibling, so
Okay.
um, which I think doing anything kind of artistic or creative is potentially an advantage because
Mm.
yeah, because they're sort of like a canary in the coal mine, so you get all the you, I think I probably came across lots of stuff earlier in terms of what I was consuming and stuff, and you get a sort of like hand me
Okay.
up. So with like music and stuff, you kind of I think it's quite common like if you
Right,
like
right. I thought you might have been saying that the older sibling is often more serious and right, I'm going to go and become a doctor.
oh,
But you,
well,
which
that
might also
that
be
is
true. But
Also very, very much the case here. Yeah, but yeah. So my older brother is a barrister.
oh, there you
Uh,
go.
Talking bollocks to drunks. No, but yeah, I think also sort of growing up as well. It's like you, as I said, I think I was watching quite a lot of comedy quite young. And I think probably quite a lot of that came from him as well.
Right, right.
Uh,
Yeah. And was there, I mean, some people, I mean, Peter Holmes on his podcast famously talks about the challenges in his family life growing up, and I think Jimmy Carr does as well, and how there's kind of like being the clown, was sort of like, a way of coping with, one's family circumstances or what have you. Is there, I mean, don't share anything you're not comfortable with, but yeah, is there something that made you comedy curious in the first instance to do with how you related to people at school or anything at all?
yeah, I think yeah. I mean, this I imagine this probably fairly standard for lots. Yeah, I was kind of well. I mean, I suppose what I found out down the line, like ev I was going to say every other comedian, but it's probably a higher proportion than this. That I well, I mean, I have ADHD, which was
Oh yeah.
undiagnosed until like I was 24 or so.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but yeah, so I think. But I think also the kind of the way that manifests, I wasn't particularly hyper or anything, but
Hmm.
um I think it did mean that I was probably the sort of class clown and stuff, I think,
Oh
growing up
yeah.
that way. So I think probably from quite a young age, I mean, as I said, I got into comedy later, but I think from quite a young age, probably quite a lot of
Hmm.
my identity socially was based around sort of being funny and stuff.
Yes.
Um, and I think uh and yeah, I guess well that's the whole in terms of the bug or whatever. It's like when you say something you get a laugh or whatever, that's
Right,
that
right.
yeah, you get the kind of um well encouragement slash discouragement sort of growing up, I guess. um
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned ADHD. It's just which does seem to be like pretty much all the comedians have, and then particularly hang out with comedians. That's our normal. I mean, I just I don't know. I really struggle with the idea that ADHD is even a thing, which I think could get me in trouble. But it's like I do worry that like certain it's just this whole process of adding labels to things and then saying right now you can have these drugs so you won't be that thing, and I don't know, there's something like yeah
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think with I mean, I don't really. I mean, I'm not well informed, so I mean, which I guess is another thing I like about comedy because you can kind of weigh in on a subject without having any kind of expertise. You don't need
indeed,
you don't need to be right. You just need to be entertaining talking
a bit
about
like
it.
politics really,
Yeah, yeah. Well, basically, yeah. Well, some crosses.
unfortunately. Yeah,
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Uh. Only politicians are funnier. Yes. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
no, I mean sometimes they're too funny,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can come on to the
Yeah.
ADHD more stuff in the
But
drug
yeah,
section.
no, yeah,
Oh, go on.
yeah. Well, probably inevitably will, but I think with that, with ADHD, I suppose I find that easy because someone's attention. I think that is something which is probably quite measurable. In
Mm,
a way that like that there are kind of clinical tests that can be done where you can kind of compare like oh well this person is able to sort of focus demonstrably better than that person and under the influence of said drug or whatever that
right, right.
I think sometimes with other st I think something that like a lot more people seem to be diagnosed with autism now.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't really, and I suppose it seems a bit stranger because with that, like that seems like, well, to what extent are we kind of sort of medicalizing people's personalities?
Well, yeah, I mean, even with the ADHD, and again, I'm not an expert on this, although I have done, studied cognitive psychology and neuroscience and things back in the
Well,
day.
well, yeah, you're in the land of the blind.
Yeah,
Well,
the one-eyed
one,
man is king, as they say. But it
we,
seemed like,
we both wear glasses, so we're not quite blind, but we're
well, you know,
getting
on
there.
on the road. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is the thing is I mean, I do this joke on stage where I sort of say, I haven't got ADHD, I just can't focus on your boring shit. I mean, this question of like, how much like attention. I mean, I mean, I should probably look at some of the studies for it, but it's an interesting question to me. Is like, is it the case that, of a population that we have established that, 90% of people are actually able to stay focused attention to watch an entire film for like an hour and a half or whatever measure that it happens to be, and then 10% of the population actually these fuckers can't stop looking at their phones, and that like that we are like the outliers in some sense. Yeah, I need to do some more research. It's an interesting, but again, it's I mean that's the other thing about being a comedian is that we're always we're looking at words, aren't we? And it's like our currency is kind of like I'm using this word, and what are the meanings that it sort of implies to people, and there's this sort of process of you what was it? I think I don't necessarily want to reveal other people's jokes, but I mean Zach Baker was making a great joke about depression. That sounds wrong, but no, it's a great joke. He's a very
No,
funny comedian.
no, yeah,
But like he was using about the joke worked around the frequency with which depression has been referred to and perhaps how the stigma has evolved and all these things. So it's kind of like we kind of like have to be plugged into what the sort of perception of things are associated with words. And then there's this whole question of like who's like because new words get minted. Right, in the same way that the government creates money magically, right? There's the extent to which the medical organization creates these terms magically, and they come into common use, and it's a really weird thing, isn't it?
yeah. I think what is quite sort of interesting. Yeah, I think yeah, yeah. Is it called like the DSM manual, which keeps on getting longer and longer? Where
Right,
it's
right.
and I don't I think one of the things which is yeah quite interesting to me is like how much this stuff has kind of slipped into like common parlance, just like in kind of just day-to-day conversation,
Right,
like
right.
how much I guess like how much sort of things like kind of therapy speak and stuff come
Mm,
up, but it's sort of weird. It's not the fact that this is out there. I think it's more the fact that kind of um well us sort of muggles as people who aren't necessarily experts is like well to what extent we're using sort of scientific or like sort of quasi-medical terminology to
mm.
talk about our behavior like as if we were to really kind of understand these things like I think um sorry it's quite a kind of broad vague thought but I think kind of I mean, I think for one example, like I think people talk about a lot of people seem to talk about dopamine quite a lot,
They
which
do. My kids talk a lot about
like as if like they have a kind of understanding of like neuroscience or like the kind of like unfathomably like complex way the brain works, which like you're not. It's this thing of like you're not a neuroscientist. This is just a completely kind of like bastardized, simplistic, sort of reductive
Yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying.
misunderstanding of the actual. I suppose what I'm saying is I suspect. I mean, this is probably applicable to lots of things, but it's like almost. I feel like total ignorance is probably better than what you have a lot of the time, which is like people sort of understanding like 5% of
It's like
it.
confident misunderstanding is the kind of
Yeah, exactly. Like I think it would be better just to say like I don't know. And so as to just sort of talk about it,
Mm.
like in kind of ordinary language or within the kind of realm of our own experience than to try and yes, it's sort of adopt a vernacular as if we were to have any kind of expertise, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. Yeah, with the you're saying about the dopamine, it's sort of almost talked about recently. My kids have been talking about it, and I think that they're getting it from social media, and they're talking about it almost a bit like we might talk about. I can't think of the word, but other things like your sort of like your blood sugar level or something. Like that it's
Yeah.
kind of in those same ways, and it's really interesting how that evolves. I'd love to talk about more about that, but I'm conscious of time. I'm really interested
Yeah.
to get through the last couple of questions, which are, the last penultimate is how do drugs affect your perception of reality? And as I often say, by drugs doesn't have to be, I mean, it's, any substance, is it caffeine, potatoes, ADHD medication, all sorts of things. And I think it does actually segue because like the things you're talking about, the way in which we use words, that sort of is the perception of reality. And people hear words being used in certain ways and they start to believe things about the brain and about how things work. Yeah, what's going on with your perception of reality and do are drugs involved?
That's a good crowd work question. What's going on with your perception of reality? Uh and are you on the dating as sorry, I think I am medicated for ADHD.
Right.
Yeah, I mean which is a sort of peculiar thing. I mean because because the effects of the drug are counterintuitive because what
Yeah,
I'm on.
tell me, I've never taken such medication.
Okay,
How do you find it?
so what I'm on is lisdexamphetamine, which is yeah, it is a stimulant,
Right.
uh, but it kind of perversely, I think, just like calms me down and stuff in a way.
Does it?
I was never particularly like hyper and stuff. I think from
Mm.
I think it was quite spaced out. But my friends used to say at school that I sort of seemed perpetually like I was slightly stoned or something. Just
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
uh where whereas it kind of I think you might sort of expect a stimulant to make you feel sort of quite sort of wired and
Right, right.
jittery and stuff. But I think actually I just feel quite sort of calm and centered and stuff. But which is I had a kind of weird precedent for that. Like at uni, like a few times I did coke,
Uh-huh.
and like the people I was with would get kind of very like loud and kind of boisterous and stuff like
Right,
that.
right, right.
I'd get quieter and just be like, oh yeah, I just
Yeah, that's interesting. Our last
yeah,
guest,
like yeah, go and
Renee
tidy
Millette, was saying the
up.
same thing actually. So she I think had, I think both ADHD, autism, and she talked about the experiencing the same thing with coke.
Who was that? Sorry.
There was Renee Millette, who was we had on the last podcast, or Wimajik. She's one of the virtual reality comedians that I hang out with, and then she describes almost exactly the same thing. But it was interesting. You were saying that your friends at school said that you seemed sort of slightly stoned all the time, but that sounds quite calm. So, like, that sounds like your resting state was calm, but you're saying then that the lisdexamfetamine calms you down further.
Well, yeah, I mean, not that I was kind of, I suppose, but what I was, it was quite sort of spaced out, but also probably quite sort of giggly and stuff, and
Oh, quite
quite,
easily distracted, maybe.
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah,
Right.
and I suppose it's, yeah, I'm probably, well, more sensible, but more functional on, yeah,
Right, right.
on,
And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, I have a friend who absolutely swears by the ADHD medication. Like it's funny because I always saw him as somebody who was quite effective at getting things done, but his description was that he, would be getting the wrong things done, and he would end up having to spend time working late to get all the things that he should have done. Is that similar to you?
Absolutely, yeah. That was that was exactly it, and yeah, and I mean, there's the whole sort of classic thing of like, oh well, if you want something getting done, have a more pressing deadline that you're up against. I think, yeah, like,
Right. But so it's, I mean, I guess this is entirely trivial, but is there an extent to which the ADHD medication, in terms of what it does, is that it allows you to manage your procrastination?
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, because
Um,
it's just that, like, when I was growing up, procrastination, that was sort of like a, part of one's personality. And then it's interesting now that for me, this is probably a reflection of how old I am, is that we've
yeah,
transitioned from a society in which, we would say like, oh, he's just a procrastinator, to now we're in a society where if you have trouble with procrastination, you can now have some medication to help you fix that issue. It's really
yeah,
interesting change from, you know, this is the older guy looking back in my day. We just procrastinated as well.
yeah.
Goodness me. Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then, yeah, I suppose, yeah, but by the same kind of token, I guess it's like, well, we both wear glasses. Well, if we go, well, sort of slightly further back in time, I mean, there's a point at which, like, oh, well, some people's eyesight just deteriorated or just got worse.
Yes. Or
Then
there's even that opinion
we
that maybe we don't even really need glasses, and that's another kind of thing that if we hadn't been offered, I don't know, when did you start wearing glasses out of interest?
when I was actually, I'm not sure when probably about 13, I think.
Yeah, for me it was like 15. And there are some people, perhaps heretical, strange flat earth people, who say that if we hadn't been diagnosed and medicated, actually, like, our eyes would have self-adjusted. Like, I don't know if
Yeah,
whether one believes that or not. It's but yeah, these,
it's complicated that, I guess, because I suppose that there probably are like genetic factors involved and stuff as well. But like, I suppose, well, I suppose if we hadn't, then maybe certain.
well, it's difficult because it's not a controlled experiment in that we can't, like I mean, I have identical twin boys. Like, we could have given one of them glasses at 12. I mean, my older son
Yeah,
has glasses. The identical twin boys, they're 16 and they still don't seem to need glasses. But it's this weird thing is like, having taken the glasses, that's then affecting the work that your eyes are doing. And there's an argument. I'm not saying I agree with this or this is necessarily true, but it's an interesting idea that says, I mean, you can imagine, I'm not saying this is the world, but you can imagine a world that was over medicalized or over glassified, in as much as, you can
yeah,
see that there are incentives in place for the people who manufacture the glasses to do the assessment of people to say you need glasses, and it sort of feeds the cycle. And similarly with
yeah,
different kinds of medication. So I mean, I have these arguments with my friend, and he's like, no, in Britain it's really, I mean, it's like, it's very difficult to get ADHD medication, and you've got to, and it's all very, very controlled and safe and all this, that, and the other. Of course, the American comedians are like, oh, I just said I felt a bit, and I got some. Who knows what the reality is?
yeah.
It's a strange world, but I think this takes us into our final question, which is, what does it all mean? This, like, how do we make sense of it? Is there like a sort of a reliable medical governmental organization that's looking after our needs and making up, sensible terms? Are we living in a simulation, or are we just dreams in the mind of God? What does it all mean, Freddie? Like, this life, this universe, this everything.
Um, yeah, fuck. God. Well, you can't have asked a more sort of qualified person. I mean, I think, yeah, I think we just have. I think, well, I think if I knew, I probably wouldn't be doing comedy.
Oh,
Is
really? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine it's not comedy, whatever it is, but I don't. They I suppose, yeah. I mean, various people said you look at the universe, it is a sort of cosmic joke. I suppose, yeah. I don't know. I think I guess I find it quite funny in a way that kind of we're still doing philosophy in a way, because I think sort of Socrates sort of knocked it out
Mm.
of the park early doors. I think
Oh, yeah.
just I just don't think anyone knows anything.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I
Yeah.
just I mean, sort of, I mean, it's kind of interesting thinking about it. I mean, maybe that's why people are still doing it, but I think. I think basically the safest answer to most questions is I don't know.
Brilliant.
And but yeah, we're the yeah, which I guess is yeah quite a nice thing about comedy because again you don't need to be right about things, you just need to be entertaining.
Indeed, indeed. Well, and I think that's a really insightful answer. Yes, and of course, I mean, the listeners will probably all know, of course, about. I think it was inscribed at the temple I can't even say the words. The inscribed at the temple of, is it Adelphi, that is like who no, no, that was know thyself. Oh no, I'm mixing these things up completely. But there's Socrates. There was like oh no, and they asked the oracle at the temple of Adelphi, who is the wisest person, and they said Socrates, and then they asked Socrates why he was the wisest person, and he says because I know that I know nothing. And yeah, it's and that I was going to connect that to, that's the thing is, I get the sense that many people feel that there is kind of a reality, like there is, there are things that are chairs, or then there is like a platonic concept of chair, and that there's like, that things are really are a certain way. There's a kind of like beyond the bounds of their immediate. Oh, I can see there's what looks like a table here. It's like yes, there are other houses and there are other tables, and there are, yes, people are behaving in this way, and immigrants are doing this, and other people are doing that, and it's like it sort of exists in people's minds as out, like their perception of the out there is it's very solid and it is just so, and I think even I'm guilty of the same thing. Whereas I think the reality about what's really going on, who knows, man? It just could be anything, couldn't it?
Well, I think quite interesting. I mean, you mentioned flat earthers earlier, and I'm sorry, I'm not about to come out as a flat earther.
It's a
But,
safe space, if
yeah,
you you know.
that'd be that's the one thing that we can know for certain. But no, I think I think what is quite interesting is like I don't I don't really know that the Earth is flat. Sorry, no, I don't really know that the Earth isn't flat.
Okay, okay. Whatever, go on.
What I know is just that kind of people I regard as sensible or who do have expertise have told me that the world is round and that I would rather put my trust in those people than a kind
Mm.
of YouTube video of a guy in sort of wraparound sunglasses ranting in a truck. Like, it's not like, but like,
Doesn't inspire confidence in the
but
same
it's like
way.
I don't have first-hand experience, which is directly confirmed to me that the Earth is round. I've just taken it on trust, which is again the same thing that I mean, yeah, it's like I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that's not because I really know what's going on. It's
Mm,
just I've just placed my trust in kind of essentially mainstream institutions rather than just
mm.
some random other source. But I don't. Yeah, it's like ultimately everything is just sort of unknowable. Uh,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
great point, well made. I think that is definably the last word of a sort. It's been a great conversation, and
Yeah,
we could,
on everything. Yeah.
there were so many other tangents that we could have gone into, but it's so lovely to be able to talk. There's a community of comedians, and we get to see each other, and we have little tiny little chats here and there in gigs, and it's lovely to have a longer conversation with you. Freddie, let's say the names of the links of the places. Where can people find you if they want to see more of your comedy?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram, as I mentioned, and TikTok. Instagram at Freddie H Hill.
Hmm.
I also run a comedy night twice a month in Stoke Newington called Comedy at the Hum.
Hmm.
That's there's links to that on my profile. Um, yeah, that's about it, really. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic. Well, we'll get all those links in the show notes. And well, thanks everyone. And remember, you can help support comedians on technology, people, and drugs by going to patreon.com/comedians on, where any level of support will help us continue to produce this show. I don't think we received anything there, and I'm not really maintaining that page. I've still got this in my notes. I say it every week. Anyway, you could be the first. But it is a cost of living crisis. No, why would give any money to this kind of thing? But you could support us by following our Facebook group and commenting or asking questions there, or asking questions on Spotify. We'd love to have some interaction with the listeners, and we look forward to being in your ears again soon. Last word to our fantastic guest, Freddie Hill.
Uh, yeah, you gave me a heads up about this earlier. Uh, follow me on Instagram.